Hello everyone, welcome back to Major Hi-Fi. I'm Luke. Today we're going to be talking about Campfire Audio's Dorado IEM. So Campfire Audio has become a pretty prestigious name in the world of IEMs. They have a number of products that have gotten a lot of buzz, and the Dorado is on the newer side, not super new, but it hasn't gotten quite as much buzz as I think it might deserve. So I wanted to talk a bit more about the Dorado and what I got from it, and what you might get from it too if you think it's right for you. This runs for a little bit over $1,000, I think $1,099, so it's on the higher end of the price spectrum, but Campfire Audio is definitely known for really high quality and generally meeting the kind of challenge of their price points. So I wasn't too skeptical with the price point on this as I might be from another company, just because I've heard a lot of Campfire's IEMs and I know what to expect from them. That being said, even the best companies do have duds and they do make things that don't quite live up to their standard, so I was still wanting to make sure that this would meet my expectations, hopefully exceed them a little bit. So let's start out by taking it out of the box and looking at what's inside. All right, so I'm just gonna open this up, and really awesome packaging. Always love their packaging. It comes inside of this crazy like metallic gold sort of casing. So a pretty simple presentation. We just get the carrying case with the IEMs, and then we have some other ear tips in here. We get these same carrying cases with a lot of Campfire's IEMs. They have a nice fabric outer shell. They seem very protective and they're pretty stylish, I would say. This one's got a nice sort of orange tangerine color to it. And then I also like the way that they package things and that they give you these nice drawstring kind of bags. And they put one of the IEMs in each sort of compartment of it. So if I pull this out here, here's one of them. And then if I pull this out here, here's the other one. And then in this box, we get the same type of drawstring bags that contain the different ear tips. And you could also fit these inside of the case along with the IEMs if you wanted to. So these have this cool dark gray mirrored black finish on them. Not what we see from a lot of the sort of more solid color bodies on many of Campfire's IEMs. These are definitely noticeably smaller than a lot of Campfire's products. They have a similar fit in terms of being a bit more angular, though these do have a more curved edge and a bit of an overall smoother build to them than other Campfire IEMs do. I would say that they are slightly more comfortable, though all of their IEMs are pretty darn comfortable. These ones, just with the smaller size and the more curved outer sort of body and shape, make them a little bit easier just to get into the right place in your ear. And then I love anything that has this reflective mirrored outer shell on it. I think it's such a cool look. Definitely should be used more. I love the super modern character that it gives anything, and also just makes it look that much more luxurious. So these are a hybrid IEM. They have one balanced armature driver and one dynamic driver. And Campfire says this should help avoid any crossover or complications. The balanced armature driver is for the high end, and the dynamic driver is for the mids and lows. These have a ceramic body, which is supposed to help prevent any vibration when paired with the dynamic driver. These have a frequency response of 5 Hz to 22 kHz and an impedance of 10 ohms. All right, so let's talk about how these sound. So for the Soundstage, these felt to have an overall more deep than wide sound. Definitely still plenty of width, but the depth felt like their real strength in terms of their ability to convey front to back. The sound separation on these was pretty good. Their ability to isolate different frequency ranges is absolutely stellar. However, I would say that they have a bit more blend than they do intense sort of feathering of the sound. And I don't say this as a negative thing generally. It's just a sound that kind of marries the elements a bit more, and there's just kind of different approaches. There's a such thing as too much blend, where stuff is just kind of all stacked together and overly glued. It's just not intensely holographic. It definitely focuses more on a lot of body and kind of weight. When you do give it a super wide mix, it definitely can go there. The Soundstage was not really the first thing that blew me away with these. It was good. It just wasn't the sort of like winning factor, I feel like, but they do have some winning factors, so we're gonna get to those. Overall, very ample Soundstage, good separation. Feels about on par with other Campfire IEMs. I find that a lot of companies tend to have not hugely varying sound stages, some of them do. Once you get to a certain width, there's no reason for you to be making an IEM with less width than you've achieved before, right? Though obviously they all have different drivers and, you know, inner workings and whatnot. But in terms of the sound stage and the imaging, it feels like it gets the job done. And it definitely seems to take advantage of the upper parts of the frequency spectrum a little bit more for width than the lower parts, as is not atypical for IEMs or just headphones in general. The stereo field is definitely very well conveyed and no area of it is skimped on, but the depth is definitely where these go above and beyond in terms of being able to convey a sense of just kind of like theater and room. So in terms of high end, these have a very tailored high end in terms of that they're very careful in where they boost. So they are overall a somewhat brighter sound, but they have a very carefully, detailed sort of cutting and boosting going on in the high end that makes it a very particular sound. So it does have some shine, but because of this very particular kind of tailoring to it, it's not this overarching kind of all-encompassing bright sound. It's more so these sort of detailed little pockets of brightness that we get throughout the spectrum. An overall smoother, warmer high end doesn't have a ton of really direct sort of glimmer to it, I guess, but it does feel like an overall brighter sound just done with this very smooth character, kind of similar to I was talking about the BGVP NS9. Obviously that is like 1/10 of the price of this and they sound very different, but in terms of the method used for brightness, it is similar, just the sort of mechanism and, style. I listened to the song Set Me on Fire by reggae artist Savannah. Definitely recommend checking her out, Sevana. She's from Jamaica. Really incredible vocalist, writer, composer, just great songs, and they're all mixed really well, so definitely sound great on your IEMs or headphones. So I listened to this song and I felt like the Dorado pulled a fair amount of breathiness and texture from the vocals, but not so much that the vocals felt hyper modernized, I guess. They still felt very silky, but not with an intense shine to them. Of course, also with this kind of more refined, tailored high end, we get very little sibilance or harsh frequencies anywhere. They do have a very, very light resonance to them that is pretty easy on the ears, and overall very easy on the ears IEM in general, actually. But yeah, they definitely give the high end a boost, but with a very light touch, and they do it in a very sort of particular, careful way. That's what I would say, is they're careful with the high end. They want to make sure they're giving it to you, but not way too much. They don't want to overwhelm your ears. If you want sort of this intense overarching shine, these might feel a little bit dark to you, though they definitely are not dark on their own. If you get used to them, even just after listening to like 2 tracks, any sort of sense of maybe non-intense brightness will just sort of even out. It definitely is not a dark IEM, but if you are sort of more attuned to something super bright, this might take a little bit of adjusting to, but once you adjust, it's smooth sailing from there on out. So kind of similar to the high end, the mid-range is also this very sort of carefully tailored, not overdone section, definitely not subdued, but just in terms of its boosting and kind of forwardness, it's done in a very particular way that's very calculated and not just kind of this huge wide boost, definitely smaller kind of peaks, and valleys. So it has a light resonance to it that gives it a nice sort of cutting edge, but definitely staying away from anything overly harsh. So these have a kind of subtle resonant tone to the mid-range that gives them a nice healthy dose of cutting presence, but overall they have a more rounded mid-response. The high mids are definitely pretty selectively taken advantage of, whereas the low mids are a bit more boosted across the board. So the low mids feel a lot more colored and full and forward, whereas the high mids don't feel subdued. It's not a V shape. But definitely don't feel as kind of overall just pushed. They're much more selectively boosted, like I said, sort of with the high end. They definitely do have a sense of sort of bite to them, and it's very gratifying in how consistently kind of easy on the ears it is. These just have a very sort of serene sound to them, so you're never gonna get that feeling of like, oof, like, calm down on that end or pull back that frequency or whatnot. They tend to have, like I said, this just very tailored, very groomed sound to them, which most IEMs in this price range do have this very groomed, tailored sound to them, very cleaned up, which is what you're gonna probably be looking for in this price range, or just in any sort of good IEM is gonna have that very cleaned up, refined sound to it. What these do is they achieve that definitely through a smaller amount of boosts, and a sort of like very specific specified range of cuts, as opposed to an IEM that does that by like, really boosting certain frequencies that help convey a lot of cleanliness. These do it more so in an understated way, I guess. So they definitely take the less is more approach in terms of the boosting. A small amount of presence here, a small amount of presence there creates an overall very satisfying presence when you put it all together. There's no large area of the high mid or high end that feels like it's just being, pushed forward overall. It's all done, like I said, in sort of smaller pockets. These have a very, very satisfying low-end response. It's definitely pretty sub-heavy. I would say it still takes advantage of the sort of 60 hertz plus range, but in terms of below that, it's pretty impressively, guttural and definitely taking those basement frequencies all the way home. I was talking about these being really good at isolating various areas of the frequency spectrum. That definitely comes through really well in the low end. So in terms of giving you the full delivery of that kick drum or that bass or whatever's laying down there, it's gonna really take that and give it a lot of space. So I listened to All Is Full of Love by Bjork, classic song. And on these, they have this huge booming kick drum, and there's a couple of different ways for this to kind of be handled by an IEM, which is that it could kind of be married to the rest of the song. And like I said, these definitely do a fair amount of sort of coherent, light blending. But in terms of the low end, they definitely do give it a bit more of its kind of own space to sit. So the kick drum in this felt very much like it was given a lot of room just to perform on its own, and in terms of those subby frequencies, I could really pick it out extremely well. And even as the song kind of grew and more elements came in, that kick drum remained very central and very, very clear and cutting through the mix, not in the sense that it was overwhelming the rest of it, but definitely in the sense that I was not ever losing it. It's definitely not an uncontained low end, but it does give things a fair amount of room to kind of stomp around. And then also in terms of punch, these are super tight, and especially their dynamics in terms of their punch and ability to sort of just get that really nice attack on drums or any type of percussion is really impressive, and also sort of plucking sounds from string instruments and the kind of various weird harp sounds, for example, that I heard in that Bjork song, were all really well kind of plucked in there. It definitely offers a very satisfying kind of physical response, These have an overall very sort of satisfyingly vibrating sound to them in a way that doesn't feel like it's rumbling or muddy, but it's a very full sound, very head-filling. Yeah, overall, these definitely have this kind of Campfire Audio sound to them. I find that Campfire Audio, like a number of other sort of big IEM companies, in order to get a loyal following, you have to be delivering some sort of consistency, not just in quality, but also kind of in sound, not generally sound signature or tuning, but in terms of sound coloring or tonality. Often in these companies that have a very loyal customer base, you're gonna find that they have some slight similarities because people keep coming back for that same satisfying, semi-familiar sound, and Campfire definitely has that Campfire sound. Not intensely, it's not like I could, pick it out every single time maybe, but these definitely do seem like they follow the range of kind of Campfire tonality, that kind of warm, Campfire makes sense, sound that they tend to have. These definitely take a more subdued approach to sort of the brighter, more resonant areas of the spectrum, like I said. They don't feel scooped out anywhere, but definitely not intensely boosted in too many areas, but the low end, like I said, is definitely a point of pretty big recognition on these. The sort of character I would give to a lot of Campfire Audio IEMs, and especially the Dorado, is just extremely satisfying. It really gives you the ability to kind of dive into the music. The way I kind of kept thinking about it while I was using them, I don't know if this is gonna make sense, but like when you yawn or you stretch and you get that nice head rush that kind of just makes your your ears and your head feel really nice for a second. I feel like that's kind of the sort of sense of satisfying, that these give you, because not because they have, that kind of implies a pressured sound, which I don't think most people would enjoy. They don't have that going on, but they do have this very nice kind of physical sensation to them that they create with all their texture and definition. And like I said, that really pointed sort of punchy sound these have creates a nice sensory experience overall. One artist I listened to a lot on these was LP. I think I mentioned her in another video, hopefully not too many videos, but I've been listening to her a lot. Highly recommend checking her out. She's it's kind of this sort of rock and roll pop fusion, but then she's also trained in opera, so randomly there's full opera sections. Really cool to listen to on any headphone, great mixing. done on all of these albums too. Literally anything from her discography, just throw it on your headphones, you'll have a great time. But I listened to a couple of her albums on these IEMs, and they have a very resonant sound to them, these albums do. They have a very bright sound to them in general, and a lot of instrumentation going on, a lot of detail. And so in terms of looking at these overall, just sort of their entire character, their lows, highs, mids, soundstage, these albums were a great example of how these excelled, and that they were able to really give a smooth, satisfying translation of these albums that definitely can be translated as very sharp and resonant because of the sort of composure that they have. And these did a great job of, like I've talked about throughout this, of giving those selective boosts, and maybe not more aggressive, but definitely I would say they cut a little bit more than they boost. So their sort of way of cleaning up is more so taking back what's in the way as opposed to pushing forward, the most satisfying frequencies. And then they just have this nice coloring to them that really brings a new sort of unique angle to whatever you're listening to. And I found that throughout these albums that it kind of gave them a little bit of new life. I've heard these a number of times. It made me want to listen back through them again in a way I haven't in a minute, or I was like, you know what, I want to hear every song on the Dorado now. And their ability to convey a lot of depth, and then also their sort of really potent low-end response, makes them a very high energy, able kind of IEM. So if you're listening to anything more exciting or cinematic, I also listened to the Interstellar soundtrack. I've been hearing about that in so many reviews recently for some reason, audiophile reviews keep mentioning the Interstellar soundtrack, which I never thought to listen to. It is one of my favorite movies. Anyways, I listened to that on these. Like I said before, that sort of sense of depth and energy these are able to convey make them really great for anything that has that more cinematic kind of, big theatrical sound to it. So overall, like I kind of mentioned at the start, in terms of meeting the standard that Campfire has set for themselves, these 100% do that. They do definitely scale that steep summit of their price point really well. And I think if you like that kind of more selective brightness, and sort of lighter resonance, but not devoid of resonance sound, then these are really, really great for that. And then also, like I said, they have that really impressive sub-response. I would be really curious to hear what you guys think about these. Please leave your thoughts in the comments or post on the Major Hi-Fi forum. If you have any questions about these, how they compare to other IEMs from other companies or whatnot, you can either leave a comment and I'd be happy to answer, or you can check out Major Hi-Fi's IEM ranking tool, which I will link in the description. All right, so those are my thoughts on Campfire Audio's Dorado. I will be back very soon with some more reviews, and until next time, happy listening.